Bamaga is a small community town 40 kilometres from Cape York in Queensland, 1,000 kilometres northwest of Cairns. The traditional owners of the lands are the Agamuthi, Atambaya, Wathali, Yadhay Kanu, and Gudung people. Bamaga is a multilingual town where Kalawalaya Broken, which is a Torres Strait Islander Creole, and English is spoken. According to the 2021 census, there are 1,180 people living in Bamaga, 929 of which are Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. As the community of Bamaga is growing, intergenerational knowledge transfer is important to the families and community members. Members of the Indigenous community and certain educators strongly advocate for this. Most frequently, this is discussed in terms of making sure that the curriculum reflects Indigenous cultures and encourages the preservation of Indigenous language and knowledge, such as that related to holy sites, flora, fauna, and wildlife and seasons. The focus topic where literacy will be implemented into the lessons is within the English curriculum. Year 7 students will have the chance to create their own culturally based imaginative story on how water came to be in Bamaga. These stories will be the final product of the unit and assessment. The linking in with curriculum is created through creating literary texts that adopt stylistic features encountered in other texts, for example, narrative viewpoints, structure of stanzas, contrast and juxtaposition. ACELT 1625. This will be shown in the classroom through students writing and illustrating their own dreaming story about how water came to be in Bamaga. Students will also be linking in with the content descriptor ACELY 1804. Use interaction skills while discussing and presenting ideas and information, selecting body paragraphs, voice qualities, and other elements, for example, music and sound, to add interest and meaning. They will use literacy skills by actively participating in speaking and listening activities in partners, groups, classes, schools, and communities, including casual talks, discussions, debates, and presentations. By creating literature, students are able to use literacy skills, including using aspects of text in imaginative recreations, such as resituating a character from a text in a new situation, creating chapters for an autobiography, short stories, or diaries. They will use literacy skills by actively participating in speaking and listening activities in partners, groups, classes, schools, and communities, including casual talks, discussions, and debates. While linking in with the Australian curriculum, students will also be linking in with First Nation learning through the variety of Yakapora's 8 Ways of Learning framework. This framework has several advantages when used in learning environments. The 8 Ways is an overlap of learning whereby First Nation learning and Western learning intersects and overlaps to integrate First Nation learning and Western learning. Students will be linking in with story sharing. This will be incorporated through cultural experiences via storytelling. During our session, students will be encouraged and engaged in their learning by hearing personal anecdotes from the elders who will be invited in to teach the history of how water came to be in Bamaga via authentic dreaming stories of the area. Community links will also be incorporated by ensuring that community is connected within the classroom and the subject area. By having an elder within our classroom for the whole session, chatting, helping, and interacting with all students at various times in a formal and casual fashion, students are receiving authentic community linking education. And lastly, land links. By including information about Australia and the history of Indigenous people, as well as anecdotes from the local community, this lesson plan makes connections both locally and personally to the students within the classroom. Linking this learning in with their geography unit of water in the world. This is where the numeracy component will come into student learning. Students will go out on a field trip to the local creeks that run through Bamaga, one being the Blackgin Creek, the other Moresby Creeks. Students will look at the way the flow of water connects people as it moves through the environment and the ways that it affects the place. ACHGK038. Students will then come back to the classroom and look at the path on the local map to see if there are any changes to the land and how the water path travels, as well as ACHGK041, economic, cultural, spiritual and aesthetic value of water for people, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and peoples of the Asian region. Students will learn about and explore the multi-layered meanings associated with rivers, waterways, waterholes, seas, lakes, soaks, and springs for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from elders within the community, and how the rivers are used by people of the area, such as for economic purposes of selling fish that are caught, which students are then able to incorporate into their stories. This will link in with the numeracy linking of using spatial reasoning by interpreting maps and diagrams. According to ACARA, students who complete Year 6 should be at key levels with their abilities to compose text, understand text, grammar, and word, as well as be at specific levels for their visual knowledge. The typical Year 6 student should be able to read, write, and comprehend a variety of subject-specific texts which contain and demonstrate a variety of representations. During learning exercises, students should be able to pay attention to the spoken instructions in detail to be able to respond and analyze information and viewpoints offered through spoken word and audio text, including audio visual text, as well as being able to use comprehension techniques, compare texts with comparable subjects or themes, and evaluate and analyze information and ideas. Students should also be able to compose and edit text using a variety of appropriate skills, knowledge, and understand that various text formats are used in learning domains to provide knowledge, explain links and processes, offer and defend viewpoints, and study problems. They gain knowledge of the numerous grammatical elements that connect and enhance the internal structure of writing, forming coherent wholes. Know about the importance of how various sentence forms express, relate, and expand concepts, as well as how various word kinds and word groupings transmit knowledge and shape many areas. They develop knowledge of the linguistic elements used to build opinion, evaluate, point of view, and bias in writings. And lastly, students are able to understand how ideas and information in the text are used in key ways to present ideas, and are able to analyze still and moving pictures, graphs, tables, and other graphic representations. They are also able to recognize and assess how images and words interact in various ways across different subjects within the curriculum. Numeracy, students have a level at which the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority expects them to reach by the end of grade 6. They fall under a variety of headings, which include estimating and calculating, recognizing and using patterns, being able to use fractions, decimals, percentages, ratio and rates, understanding and using spatial reasoning, interpreting statistics, and using measurements. By the end of Year 6, students use effective mental, written, and digital procedures to estimate and calculate with whole numbers to solve and model common issues in a variety of real-world scenarios. They recognize instances in which money is utilized and use their understanding of its worth to make purchases, create budgets, and defend the usage of money. They are able to identify and describe trends using a range of different rules and relationships. In order to solve issues in real-world situations, students visualize, arrange, and describe shapes and objects utilizing their proportions and the relationships between percentages, ratios. Learner visuals, classifies, and describe forms and objects essential characteristics in relation to their surroundings. They are able to analyze maps and diagrams utilizing scales, labels, and directional language to identify and explain routes and destinations, handle issues in real-world simulations that call for gathering, recording, showing, contrasting, and assessing the efficiency of various sorts of data presentations. They describe the results of random events using precise terminology and numerical examples. And finally, learners use metric units to estimate, quantify, compare, and calculate while addressing issues in real-world settings. Students utilize timetables, read clocks, translate amongst different time methods, and determine and order dates and events using a calendar. To ensure that students are getting a deep understanding of the focus, elders from the area are going to be invited into the classroom to aid and educate the students with dreaming stories of the local area. Once students have an understanding of the stories of Bamaga, the class will look at and compare other dreaming stories of how water came to be in their areas of Australia. Students will need to use paper, paints, colours, or computers to create their own dreaming imaginative story about how water came to be in Bamaga. A few folders will also be required for displaying students' stories in the classroom and in the school library once completed. Smarter, stronger approach. Teaching strategies need to be adjusted to support First Nations students' learning and to ensure that learning is culturally responsive and inclusive. Ways to do this are through community inclusion. By utilising Chris Sara's Smarter, Stronger approach, the community is being welcomed and incorporated into the classroom and wider school community. By inviting elders into the classroom, a positive and inclusive setting is being created, as well as deepening the cultural learning of students. Holistic education. Another teaching strategy is the holistic approach, whereby the big picture of the topic is introduced before the details. This is done through having an elder come in and sharing dreaming stories of the water in Bamaga before students look at key details and information. They are first learning about their own stories before branching out into the world around them. Scaffolding to success. Scaffolding students' learning will also be a key strategy to help support learners' independence and success. Scaffolding also ensures that First Nations students are gaining assistance with their learning until they are ready to seek teacher support and help when they are at a stage where they are comfortable. EALD mapping. Finally, teaching can be supported through the use of the EALD progress map for secondary students. With the use of this progress map, the teacher can make sure that each learner who speaks an English dialect or a second language is receiving the appropriate degree of support they require. Knowing that each learner is at a different stage within their learning can help in the development of an inclusive and encouraging classroom. How will the task be completed? Students will be taught about the linking of water in their world by both the teacher and elders of the area. Students will use the knowledge obtained through these learnings as well as those learned while out examining the river, how it flows, how it is used as an economic source for the community, an animal haven for the local animals of the area, to create their own dreaming story. This will be completed over a week's worth of lessons, with students working on different components of their learning during both English and geography classes. Students will have a checklist to follow which will help them to ensure that students are on track with their learning and working towards their final piece, their own imaginative dreaming story. Student assessment will take place over the week from the beginning right through to the end. This is a developmental approach where assessment is staggered and students are able to continually improve over each phase of their learning. By breaking up the assessment into smaller steps, students are able to become more confident as they develop their skills. By breaking up the assessment piece, the teacher will be able to monitor that the student has a clear understanding of the assessment and learning topics. The teacher is also able to monitor progress through normal conventions, including general classroom observations and asking students questions about their learning. While First Nation students are not overly forthcoming with individualized conversations, the teacher could approach this as a small group conversation if the student is not sure about participating in the conversational questions. By monitoring students' abilities before they hit the final assessment piece, teachers are able to set them up to succeed and have Yano Didgerigora.